Commander Alina Reyes had always imagined humanity's first contact with alien life would involve diplomats, scientists, and perhaps a touch of ceremony. Instead, she watched from the viewport of Orbital Defense Station Artemis as the massive obsidian ships emerged from what her sensors could only describe as spatial anomalies. Multiple unknown vessels approaching Earth orbit. Configuration unknown. No response to hails on any frequency, reported Lieutenant Cato, his voice steady despite the sweat beading on his forehead. Alina's mouth went dry as the tactical display showed the sheer scale of the approaching armada. 27 vessels, each larger than anything humanity had ever constructed, arranged in a formation that even her untrained eye recognized as military. "Send the first contact protocol package again," she ordered, following procedure even as her instincts screamed that something was terribly wrong. All channels, all languages. The response came not as words, but as blazing lines of energy that seared through the atmosphere toward Earth's major cities. From her orbital vantage point, Alina watched in horror as Beijing, New York, Lagos, and 17 other population centers erupted in blossoming clouds of destruction. 2 billion casualties estimated in first strike. Came the automated report from Earth's defense network. Orbital bombardment continuing. Kinetic projectiles targeting secondary population centers. Alina's hands gripped the command console until her knuckles turned white. The United Earth Defense Force consisted of 12 orbital platforms and a handful of short-range interceptors, a token force meant to deter human aggression, not alien invasion. "Commander," came a voice from the communications array. It was Dr. Sanjay Patel, calling from his research facility beneath the Rocky Mountains. "We've activated the Prometheus protocol." Alina's breath caught. Prometheus was the black-budget research program exploring weaponization of experimental quantum technology. Research officially banned by international treaty. Authorization. Secretary General Mbeki gave the order before Washington was hit. The authorization codes check out. Sanjay's voice was clinical, detached. It was the only way to discuss the deaths of billions. "We're opening the sealed chambers now." Across the tactical display, Alina watched as the alien vessels, the Krell, they would later learn, methodically continued their bombardment. Precision strikes against military installations, power infrastructure, and transportation networks. This wasn't random destruction. This was textbook conquest. "All stations, this is Commander Reyes." She broadcast to the 11 remaining orbital platforms. "Initiate Protocol Ragnarok." There was a moment of silence on the channel. Ragnarok was the theoretical last resort protocol, converting their civilian-grade fusion reactors into improvised nuclear devices. "Ma'am," came the hesitant response from Station Erms. "That's a suicide protocol." "Confirmed, Station Erms. But we're already dead." Alina's voice was ice. "The only question is whether we die having struck back." As the orbital stations began their grim preparations, Alina opened a secure channel to all surviving military and scientific facilities on Earth. "This is Commander Alina Reyes of the United Earth Defense Force. As of 9:47 hours UTC, I am declaring Condition Omega." She paused, knowing the weight of her next words. "Weaponize everything. Conventional rules of engagement are suspended. I repeat, weaponize everything." Down in his underground laboratory, Dr. Sanjay Patel pressed his palm against the ancient door his team had discovered 3 years earlier, buried deep beneath the Earth's crust. The symbols etched into its surface, which had defied all attempts at translation, began to glow with an eerie blue light as the door silently slid open. Inside, artifacts of impossible design rested on pedestals of an unknown material. As Sanjay approached, they pulsed with power, as if awakening from a long slumber. One artifact, a spherical device no larger than a basketball, projected holographic symbols that rearranged themselves before his eyes. "They're responding to our brainwaves," whispered Dr. Lena Chen, his research partner. "It's as if they were waiting for us." Above, the first of the orbital stations detonated in a blinding flash, temporarily blinding the sensors on one of the Krull vessels. Humanity's desperate counterattack had begun, but deep underground, an ancient power was stirring, one that would transform humanity's desperate last stand into something the galaxy had not witnessed in millennia. The first day of the war had dawned. It would not be the last. 6 months after first contact, the surviving fragments of humanity had abandoned the surface of Earth. The Krell occupation forces controlled the major urban centers, methodically harvesting resources and establishing processing facilities for unknown purposes. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, the once pristine research facility had transformed into a chaotic hive of activity. Military personnel, civilian engineers, and scientists worked side by side, their former hierarchies and specializations rendered meaningless by necessity. Dr. Sanjay Patel stood before a holographic display, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. The artifacts had yielded remarkable insights, quantum principles that contradicted established physics, materials that responded to thought, and power generation methods that bordered on miraculous. "We're ready for the next test," announced Dr. Chen, now head of the weapons division. Sanjay nodded, watching as a team carefully loaded a modified mining laser onto a testing rig. The original equipment had been salvaged from a Canadian extraction facility, one of the few pieces of heavy machinery they'd managed to evacuate before the Krell secured the region. "Activating quantum core," Chen announced, her fingers dancing across a control panel cobbled together from civilian electronics. The artifact at the center of the device pulsed with blue-green light, channeling energy through circuits never designed to handle such power. The mining laser, once used to cut through rock, fired a beam of concentrated energy that sliced through the Krell armor plating they'd recovered from a downed fighter. The material, which had previously withstood conventional weapons fire, parted like butter. "Record the configuration," Sanjay ordered. "We need 20 more units retrofitted by tomorrow." Meanwhile, in the orbital shipyards hidden on the dark side of the moon, newly promoted Admiral Elena Reyes surveyed her fleet. Fleet was perhaps too generous a term. A collection of hastily armed civilian vessels, from mining barges to luxury space yachts, now bristling with improvised weapon systems. "Status on the Vengeance," she asked her executive officer, a former commercial pilot with 3 weeks of military training. "Final armaments being installed now, Admiral. The structural reinforcements are holding, but engineering says we shouldn't push the fusion drive beyond 80%. Elena nodded grimly. The Vengeance had once been the ISS Prosperity, a cruise liner designed to ferry wealthy tourists around Earth orbit. Now its luxury cabins housed ammunition fabricators, its recreational deck converted to a field hospital, and its observation dome repurposed as a tactical operations center. "And the prisoners?" she asked. "Still cooperating, ma'am. Dr. Patel's linguistic team has made significant progress in decoding their communication protocols. The 3 Krell officers captured during a daring raid on one of their smaller vessels had proven invaluable. Through them, humanity had learned the name of their enemy and glimpsed the structure of a vast galactic civilization they had never suspected existed. More disturbing were the references to something called the Council and its protocols regarding containment species. The translations were imperfect, but Elena couldn't shake the feeling that Earth's isolation might not have been an accident. A sudden alert pulled her attention back to the tactical display. "Admiral, we're detecting unusual activity in the Krull command ship. Energy signatures are spiking." "Show me," Elena ordered, studying the readings. After months of observing Krell patterns, she had developed an intuition for their operations. "They're preparing to bring in reinforcements. Alert all vessels. Operation Uprising begins in 12 hours. The plan was audacious to the point of insanity. A simultaneous strike against all 7 Krell orbital platforms, followed by a precision attack on their planetary command center. The objective wasn't victory. Humanity lacked the numbers and firepower for that, but the capture of a single Krell interstellar vessel intact. As Elena returned to her quarters to review the final operation plans, her hand brushed against a small metal container secured to her belt. Inside was Earth soil, a tradition started by her officers, carrying a piece of their home planet as both remembrance and promise. "We're coming back," she whispered to the container. "And we're bringing hell with us." Across the lunar surface, engines began warming up as Earth's makeshift armada prepared for its first major offensive. Their ships bore the scars of hasty conversion, welding marks where weapons had been attached to civilian hulls, repurposed satellite dishes serving as sensor arrays, and in many cases, the original commercial logos still visible beneath hastily applied military markings. They were ugly, ungainly, and utterly unlike the sleek Krell vessels they would face. But they carried something the Krell had not encountered in millennia: humans with nothing left to lose. Quantum signatures detected, multiple hostiles emerging from the debris field. Admiral Elena Reyes gripped her command chair as the battlefield illuminated with weapons fire. Operation Uprising had begun 37 minutes ago, and already the carefully constructed plan was unraveling. "The mining vessels are taking heavy fire," reported her tactical officer. "Krell interceptors moving to cut off their retreat path." Elena studied the holographic display, watching as the converted mining ships, slow, cumbersome, but armed with the devastating quantum-enhanced drills, found themselves surrounded. The miners had volunteered knowing their vessels were too slow to escape once engaged. "Execute Protocol Typhon," she ordered, her voice steady despite the cost of what she just commanded. Throughout the mining fleet, crews activated systems that were never meant to exist. The reactor safety protocols disengage, fusion cores destabilized, and the final transmissions from the captains were simple: for Earth. The explosions ripped through the Krell formation, creating a chaotic maelstrom of radiation and debris that blinded their sensors, exactly as planned. "All vessels, execute attack pattern Hades," Elena commanded. "Weapons free." The remaining human ships, passenger liners, cargo haulers, private yachts, accelerated toward the Krell command vessel. Their improvised weapons weren't elegant, but they exploited a weakness Dr. Patel's team had discovered in Krell shield technology. The enemy's defenses were calibrated for energy weapons and high-velocity projectiles, not the low-tech solutions humanity had cobbled together. Railroad spikes, rebar, even plumbing pipes loaded into makeshift magnetic accelerators tore through Krell shields like they weren't there. The luxury liner Oceanic Grace, once the pride of the Atlantic passenger service, rammed its reinforced bow directly into the command vessel's propulsion array. "Boarding parties away," reported Elena's communications officer. "Teams Alpha through Echo have breached the hull." Elena activated her tactical neural link, another of Dr. Patel's adaptations of the artifact's technology, and found herself virtually present with the boarding teams. The Krell, accustomed to remote drone warfare, were completely unprepared for the visceral horror of human soldiers wielding improvised weapons. The sight of Commander Jackson using a fire axe to breach a control room would haunt Elena's dreams for years to come. "Admiral," came Jackson's voice, tight with barely controlled excitement. "We've secured the bridge. The navigation computer is intact." Before Elena could respond, a priority alert flashed across her neural interface. "What is it, Lieutenant?" she demanded, returning her full attention to her own bridge. "The Krell are transmitting on all frequencies, ma'am. You need to see this." The main display shifted to show a Krell transmission. Their written language was still mostly indecipherable, but Dr. Patel's translation algorithm highlighted one repeating phrase: "Council violation detected." "They're calling for reinforcements," Elena realized. "How long do we have?" "Unknown, Admiral. But there's something else." The lieutenant's voice dropped. "The captured Krell vessel, its computers contain navigation data for something called the Celestia Nexus. Dr. Patel believes it's the location of the Galactic Council." In the lunar base, Sanjay Patel stared at the artifacts they'd recovered from beneath Earth's surface. The mysterious devices had become more active during the battle, pulsing with increasing intensity as if responding to the conflict. "They're networked," he murmured to Dr. Chen. "Somehow, they're aware of what's happening in orbit." Chen pointed to the holographic symbols projected by the central artifact. The pattern changed when the Krell sent that transmission. "Look, this sequence here matches what we've identified as Council identifiers." Sanjay nodded slowly, a chill running down his spine. "These aren't just weapons or tools. They're keys." He turned to face the communications array. "Get me Admiral Rays." The artifacts weren't left here by chance. They were hidden, and I think I know why the Krell attacked us first. In orbit, Elena surveyed the aftermath of humanity's first victory. The cost had been horrific. 12 ships lost with all hands, hundreds of casualties across the fleet. But they had captured an intact Krell vessel capable of interstellar travel, and with it, the means to take the fight beyond their solar system. As the EDF Vengeance approached the captured Krell cruiser, Elena touched the container of Earth soil at her belt. The makeshift fleet, now reduced and bloodied, began salvage operations, transferring weapons from damaged vessels to intact ones, recovering the dead for proper ceremonies, patching hulls with whatever materials were available. The ships would carry these scars into the next battle. Elena found it fitting, visible reminders of the price already paid, and a warning to those who would stand in humanity's way. "Prepare for Phase 2, she ordered. "We're taking the fight to them." The captured Krell vessel, renamed EDF Defiance, drifted at the edge of the Kuiper Belt. Its alien technology had been partially retrofitted with human interfaces, a bizarre hybrid of sleek, almost organic Krell design, and the crude, functional adaptations of human engineering. On the bridge, Admiral Elena Reyes monitored the long-range sensors. They had intercepted encrypted Krell communications indicating a patrol would pass through this sector, and the Defiance was perfectly positioned for an ambush. "Contact detected," announced Lieutenant Kato, emerging from FTL at bearing 035. Elena tensed, expecting to see the now familiar profile of a Krell warship on the tactical display. Instead, the vessel that appeared was unlike anything they had encountered before, a crystalline structure that seemed to shimmer between states of matter. "Not Krell," she observed. "Hold fire but maintain battle readiness. Attempt communication on all frequencies." Before her communications officer could comply, the alien vessel transmitted directly to their systems, bypassing encryption as if it weren't there. The message displayed across their screens in perfect English. "Humans of Earth, we Guyudis speak." In the research section of the Defiance, Dr. Sanjay Patel felt the artifacts they had brought aboard vibrate in response to the new arrival. They recognized this species, he told Elena through the neural link. "There's some kind of resonance pattern." After tense negotiations, a representative from the vessel was permitted to board under heavy guard. The being that emerged from the airlock moved with unsettling grace, its body resembling a mantis-like arthropod, but with translucent exoskeleton revealing pulsing organs and flowing circulatory fluids beneath. "I am Talila, emissary of the Nyx Collective," it announced, voice emerging from a translator device at its throat. "We have observed your conflict with the Krell hegemony with great interest." Elena's hand remained near her sidearm. "The Krell invaded our world without provocation and slaughtered billions. Our interest is survival." Talila's compound eyes shifted, facets catching the light. "Without provocation. Interesting." The Krell told the Council that humans had activated forbidden technology and were preparing for interstellar aggression. The Council. Elena's eyes narrowed. "You mean the Galactic Council knew about the attack on Earth and did nothing?" "The Council." Talila's translator produced what might have been a bitter laugh. "The Council debates while worlds burn. They voted against intervention, citing their sacred principle of non-interference in evolutionary conflicts." Talila explained that the Nyx had once been a client species of the Krell, providing resources and labor in exchange for protection. When the Nix had attempted to claim independence, the Krell had crushed their rebellion with council approval, reducing them to virtual slaves. "Why come to us now?" Sanjay asked, joining them on the bridge. He carried one of the smaller artifacts, which pulsed rhythmically in the presence of the Nix emissary. Talila's gaze fixed on the artifact. "Because after observing your species, we believe you may succeed where we failed." The Nix reached into a pouch and extracted a crystalline data storage device. These are navigational charts for council space, including security protocols and patrol schedules. Elena accepted the device cautiously. "What do you want in return?" "In return, I will serve as your guide through council space. My people ask only that when you confront the council, you speak for those who have been silenced." Later, as Elena and Sanjay escorted Lila through the vessel, they passed the makeshift medical bay where wounded human soldiers were being treated. To their surprise, the Nix paused, observing the human doctor treating an injured Krell prisoner with the same care given to human patients. "You show compassion to your enemy," Talila observed, compound eyes flickering with what might have been confusion. "They're wounded, helpless," the doctor replied without looking up. "Whatever they did, this one's not a threat anymore." Talila turned to Elena, mandibles clicking softly. "This is why we sought you out. The Nix fight because we must. The Krell fight because they are programmed for conquest. But humans," the translator paused, as if struggling with the concept. "Humans fight with ferocity, then heal with gentleness. This duality is unknown in council space." Elena glanced at the wounded Krell receiving treatment. "We're just doing what humans do. Sometimes that's terrible, sometimes it's better." "Precisely," Talila responded. "The Galactic Council has forgotten what it means to do terrible things for necessary reasons. They have outsourced their violence to species like the Krell while pretending their hands remain clean." As they returned to the bridge, Sanjay studied the navigational data provided by the Nix. "According to this, we can reach Celestia, the Council headquarters, in approximately 60 days using the Krell drive technology." "Then we have work to do," Elena declared. "Prepare the fleet. We're taking our case directly to the Council." The human vessels, still bearing the scars of their battles with the Krell, began final preparations for the journey to Council space, their hulls now joined by the crystalline shuttles of their new Nix allies. The human Nix fleet entered the star system designated as 7391 on the 34th day of their journey to Celestia. The EDF Defiance led the formation, followed by the 7 remaining human vessels and 3 Nix crystalline ships. On the bridge of the Vengeance, Admiral Elena Reyes studied the tactical display with weary eyes. The journey had been punishing. 3 Krell pursuit vessels had ambushed them near Proxima Centauri, and though the engagement had ended in victory, the human fleet had lost the converted luxury cruiser New Horizon, with 63 souls aboard. "Reactor stability at 67%, reported Chief Engineer Dosset, his French accent thickened by exhaustion. "The parts we salvaged from the mining vessel are holding, but we cannot sustain another combat jump without extensive repairs." Elena nodded grimly. The makeshift fleet limped through space, holding together through engineering ingenuity and desperate improvisation. Hull breaches were sealed with scavenged material, power conduits bypassed with jury-rig solutions, and life support systems constantly cycled between emergency backups. "Admiral," Lieutenant Cato called from his station, "Talila is requesting permission to come aboard from the Nix vessel Symphony." Minutes later, the Nix emissary glided onto the bridge, her translucent exoskeleton catching the light of the displays. "We have received a transmission from our reconnaissance scouts," she announced without preamble. "A Krell battle group has been dispatched from Celestia. They know we are coming." "How long until intercept?" Elena asked. "Approximately 12 hours at our current velocity." Elena turned to Sanjay, who had become a fixture on the bridge, constantly monitoring the artifacts they had brought from Earth. "Doctor, what's our status on the translation of the artifact communications?" Sanjay looked up from his workstation, dark circles under his eyes. We've made progress. The devices appear to contain not just technology, but historical records. He gestured to a holographic display showing symbols flowing in complex patterns. According to what we've deciphered, Earth wasn't just randomly selected for the artifact's placement. It was once a council outpost, abandoned during something called the Severance. The Severance, Talayla interjected, mandibles clicking rapidly, and what they had learned was a sign of agitation. It is spoken of only in the oldest Nyx records, a time when the council fragmented over the use of weapons too terrible to comprehend. Sanjay nodded. The artifacts were hidden on Earth as a safeguard, either to protect them from misuse or to protect the galaxy from them. We're still not certain which. Elena considered this information, her hand unconsciously touching the container of Earth soil at her belt, a habit that had become something of a ritual among the fleet's officers. The question remains, she said finally, how do we handle the Krell battle group? We can't outrun them. And in our current state, we can't outfight them. Talayla moved to the tactical display, compound eyes reflecting the star map. There is another option. Her slender appendage indicated a nearby star system. An ancient hyperspace junction exists here, a relic from before the Council standardized travel routes. It is not on modern charts, but our ancestors recorded its location. What good does that do us? Asked Chief Engineer Doucet skeptically. It would allow us to bypass the Krell formation entirely, Talayla explained. However, the junction is unstable. Passage would be hazardous. Elena studied the proposed route. Define hazardous. The gravitational stresses would likely cause significant structural damage to your vessels. The Nyx ships can withstand such forces, but human construction. Talayla left the implication hanging. Throughout the bridge, human officers exchanged glances. They had already survived impossible odds, pushing themselves and their vessels beyond all reasonable limits. Begin preparations for junction transit, Elena ordered. All personnel to damage control stations. Transfer non-essential crew from the most vulnerable vessels to the Defiance. As the fleet altered course toward the ancient hyperspace junction, Elena toured the Vengeance one last time. In what had once been the ship's grand ballroom, hundreds of refugees from Earth had created a makeshift community. Children born during the Exodus played among improvised furniture, while elderly survivors tended hydroponic gardens growing in repurposed cocktail mixing equipment. In the medical bay, Dr. Rivera supervised the treatment of both human wounded and the small number of Krell prisoners. On the engineering deck, technicians worked tirelessly to reinforce critical systems, using materials stripped from non-essential sections of the ship. Elena paused before a memorial wall where photographs and handwritten names commemorated those lost since the invasion began. The list had grown unbearably long. "Admiral," came Sanjay's voice over the comm, "we're receiving an unusual energy signature from the artifacts. They're reacting to our proximity to the junction." "Understood. I'm on my way." As Elena returned to the bridge, she caught her reflection in a damaged bulkhead. Her uniform patched and worn, her face lined with grief and determination. The fleet would reach Celestia, no matter the cost. And when they arrived, the Council would bear witness to what their inaction had wrought. Celestia appeared on the long-range sensors as a perfect ring, a constructed world of impossible scale orbiting a binary star system. Its surface gleamed with cities of crystal and light, connected by transportation networks that resembled flowing rivers of energy. "Transit from Hyperspace Junction complete," announced Lieutenant Cato, his voice tight with strain. "All vessels reporting. Significant damage." That was an understatement. The ancient junction had torn through the already battered human fleet like a hurricane. The Vengeance had lost its entire port thruster array. The Defiance's hull was breached in 17 locations, emergency force fields flickering as they struggled to maintain atmosphere. The converted cargo hauler iron will trailed a plume of atmosphere and debris, its superstructure visibly twisted from the gravitational stresses. But they had arrived. On the Vengeance's bridge, Admiral Elena Rice pulled herself from the deck, where the last violent transition had thrown her. Blood trickled from a gash on her forehead, but her eyes remained fixed on the magnificent structure growing larger on the view screen. "Status of the fleet," she demanded. "5 human vessels operational," responded the tactical officer. "The Resilience didn't make it through the junction. All 3 Nyx ships present and functional. Another 200 souls lost." Alina allowed herself one moment of grief before refocusing. "Open a channel to all vessels. Prepare for approach formation." Talayla entered the bridge, her exoskeleton showing stress fractures from the journey. "You must understand what we now face," she said urgently. "Celestia is protected by automated defense systems designed to prevent unauthorized approach. The Council will view our arrival as an invasion." "Let them," Alina replied. "We didn't cross 60 light years to be turned away at the door." She activated the fleet-wide channel. "All vessels, this is Admiral Reyes. Form up behind the Defiance. Transfer all non-essential power to shields and structural integrity. We're going in." As the battered fleet approached Celestia, the massive Ringworld's defense grid activated. Thousands of automated sentry platforms detached from docking stations, moving to intercept the unauthorized vessels. "Incoming transmission," reported the communications officer. "Text only, in multiple languages." The message displayed across the bridge screens: "Unidentified vessels. You have entered restricted Council space. Power down and prepare for boarding, or you will be neutralized." Alina ignored the warning. Instead, she opened a broadcast channel on all frequencies. "Attention Galactic Council. This is Admiral Alina Reyes of Earth. We have come to present evidence of Krell war crimes against humanity and Council complicity through inaction. We request immediate audience with the full Council Assembly." The response was immediate, a barrage of energy weapons fire from the nearest defense platforms. "Evasive maneuvers," Alina ordered. "Return fire only against automated platforms. I want no casualties." The human vessels, despite their damage, executed a series of coordinated movements that spoke to countless battlefield drills. The Nyx ships moved with them, their crystalline structures refracting the energy weapons and absorbing much of the assault. On screens across Celestia, the unprecedented attack was broadcast live to billions of Council citizens. Species that had known only peace for millennia watched in horror as the bloody human fleet fought its way through the defense grid, not with sophisticated technology, but with desperate, determined tactics. Viewers saw human ships with visible hull breaches continuing to fight. They saw the interior of the Vengeance through a massive rupture in its command deck. Crew members in emergency vacuum suits working frantically to maintain systems while exposed to space. They saw the converted mining vessel Prometheus deliberately ram a defense platform, its crew evacuating in lifepods seconds before impact. In the Council's Grand Chamber, representatives from 17 spacefaring civilizations watched in stunned silence. Many had never witnessed actual combat outside of historical archives. "This is barbaric," whispered the Lyrian delegate, their luminescent tendrils curling in distress. "Why don't they surrender?" High Minister Zophiel, the ancient being who had led the Council for 7 centuries, studied the tactical display with unreadable eyes. "Because they cannot," he said softly. "They have nowhere to retreat to." As the human fleet pushed closer to Celestia's main docking ring, Alina received an urgent communication from Sanjay. "The artifacts are resonating with something on Celestia," he reported. "Energy signatures are off the charts." Before Alina could respond, a massive energy surge emanated from the Ringworld. The defense platforms went dormant, and a vast portal opened in Celestia's outer ring. "What's happening?" Alina demanded. Talayla's compound eyes pulsed with surprise. "The Founder's Protocol," she whispered. "It hasn't been invoked in thousands of years." "Explain," ordered Alina. "When a species arrives bearing the ancient markers, what you call artifacts, they must be granted audience. It is the oldest law of the Council, predating even the current members." On the main communication channel, A new message appeared. Human vessels. You are cleared for approach to Diplomat's dock. An escort will guide you. Elena narrowed her eyes, suspicious of the sudden change. Maintain battle readiness, she ordered. This could be a trap. As the battered human fleet limped toward the indicated docking station, they presented a shocking sight to the Council species watching from observation decks and through live feeds. Each vessel bore the visible scars of desperate battles, improvised armor welded over breaches, exposed internal systems protected by flickering force fields, and most disturbing to the Council observers, the unmistakable stains of blood visible on hulls where emergency evacuations had gone catastrophically wrong. Humanity had arrived at paradise, their ships dripping with the evidence of their struggle to survive. The grand chamber of the Galactic Council soared hundreds of meters upward, its transparent ceiling opening to the binary stars above. 17 raised platforms arranged in a perfect circle represented the member species, while the central floor, a mosaic depicting the known galaxy, served as the petitioner's ground. Admiral Elena Rice stood on this mosaic, still wearing her battle-damaged uniform. Protocol officers had attempted to provide her with appropriate attire, but she had refused. The dried Krell blood on her sleeve and the hastily treated wound on her forehead were evidence she would not conceal. Beside her stood Dr. Sanjay Patel, carrying one of the smaller artifacts in a containment field. Talila represented the Nyx, her crystalline exoskeleton reflecting prismatic light across the chamber. Behind them, a delegation of human officers and civilians, survivors chosen to represent Earth's nations and cultures, waited in silent witness. This emergency session of the Galactic Council is now convened, announced an automated voice. High Minister Zophiel presiding. The ancient being who emerged from the central platform defied easy description. Zophiel appeared almost humanoid, but with skin like flowing mercury and eyes that contained spinning galaxies. When he spoke, his voice resonated at multiple frequencies simultaneously. In my 7 centuries of service, the Founder's Protocol has never been invoked, he began. Yet here you stand, humans of Earth, bearing the markers of ascension and demanding audience. Elena stepped forward. We come seeking justice, not ascension. The Krell hegemony attacked Earth without provocation, resulting in the deaths of over 3 billion humans. The Council was aware of this genocide and chose to do nothing. Murmurs rippled through the chamber as the various representatives conferred among themselves. The Lyrisian delegate, a being of luminescent tendrils and floating gas sacs, spoke first. The Krell representative informed this council that humans had activated forbidden technology and were preparing for aggressive expansion. Non-interference in evolutionary conflicts is our highest law. Evolutionary conflicts. Elena's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. This was systematic extermination. She activated a holographic projector, and scenes of Earth's devastation filled the air above the mosaic floor. Cities reduced to ash, civilian shelters targeted with precision strikes, mass graves hastily filled as radiation poisoned the survivors. The council representatives recoiled from the images. Many had never witnessed death at such scale, their civilizations having evolved beyond physical violence millennia ago. These are regrettable scenes, acknowledged the Voluan delegate, a being composed of interconnected geometric shapes. But the Krell provided evidence that humans were weaponizing progenitor technology. Sanjay stepped forward, raising the artifact. You mean this? Yes, we studied it. Yes, we adapted it to defend ourselves after the Krell attacked. But we didn't activate it. It awoke on its own when the first Krell ships entered our system. Impossible, stated the Morrigan representative, a creature of living shadow. The markers respond only to council authorization codes. Unless, interrupted Zophiel, his mercurial features shifting, the humans themselves carry the genetic key. A profound silence fell over the chamber. What do you mean by genetic key? Demanded Elena. Zophiel's galaxy eyes focused on her with disturbing intensity. The trial you demand is not merely of the Krell, Admiral Rice. In seeking justice, you have initiated a trial of the Council itself, of our most ancient decisions and their consequences." He gestured, and the central floor transformed. The mosaic shifted, revealing historical scenes playing out beneath their feet. Civilizations rising and falling, worlds burning, species evolving and becoming extinct. "What the Council has never revealed," Zophiel continued, his voice resonating through the chamber, "is that humans are not a newly evolved species. You are the descendants of the Severance, a faction of the original Council who rejected our path of non-aggression." Gasps echoed through the chamber as Zophiel continued. Earth was not randomly selected for the artifact's placement. It was a prison world, designed to contain both the dangerous technology and the genetic lineage of those who had wielded it. The floor beneath them shifted again, showing scenes of an ancient conflict, ships similar to the artifacts attacking worlds, civilizations falling, and finally, a group of beings confined to a familiar blue-green planet. 10,000 years ago, this council made a decision to quarantine the warlike faction rather than exterminate them. Their technology was hidden among them as a test. If they evolved to use it for peace, they would be welcomed back. If for war, you would destroy them, Sanjay concluded. That's why the Krell attacked us first. They were acting on ancient contingency protocols. Talayla moved forward, her translator struggling with her rapid speech. This council claims moral superiority while ordering genocide through proxies. The Krell attacked Earth, but the Nyx, the Draconi, the Vesh, and a dozen other evolutionary conflicts. All were council-sanctioned purges of species deemed too aggressive for your utopia. Alina's hand moved to her sidearm as council security drones began to descend from concealed bays. Is this what happens now? We expose your hypocrisy, so we must be eliminated. Zophiel raised a hand, freezing the security drones in place. No. The Founder's Protocol was created for precisely this moment, when those we cast out might return, carrying both the scars of their exile and the wisdom gained from it. He turned to address the full council. The humans have not merely survived our test, they have expanded its parameters. They fight with a ferocity we had forgotten, yes, but they also show mercy we never mastered. They arrived in blood-stained ships, carrying both the wounds of war and healing for their enemies. Alina looked around the chamber, at the faces of beings who had known only peace for generations, a peace purchased with selective blindness and outsourced violence. We didn't come for judgment or forgiveness, she stated firmly. We came for justice. And you shall have it, Zophiel replied, beginning with the truth. 3 months after humanity's arrival at Celestia, the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council had transformed. The pristine, sterile environment now bore visible reminders of change, most notably the human handprints preserved in the entrance archway, left there on the day Admiral Alina Reyes had forced her way into the chamber with her bloodied palms pressed against the ancient doors. What had begun as a shocking desecration had become, by council decree, a permanent memorial. The Reformation Accords are now ratified by 14 of the 17 council species, announced Councillor Alina Reyes, her once battered uniform replaced with a synthesis of council formal attire and Earth Defense Force insignia. The Krell delegation has submitted their objections for the record. The Krell representative, a towering figure of chitinous plates and cold intelligence, inclined its head. The hegemony acknowledges the will of the Council, though we maintain that our actions were in accordance with the protocols established during the severance. Your actions were genocide, Alina responded firmly. The reparations outlined in Section 7 are not negotiable. The Krell's movements suggested barely contained rage, but when it spoke, its voice remained controlled. As the Council commands, the resource transfers to Earth will begin within the lunar cycle. High Minister Zophiel observed the exchange with his galaxy eyes swirling in complex patterns. Over the past months, he had shepherded the most significant restructuring of galactic governance in 10,000 years. The Council's policy of absolute non-interference had been replaced with the responsibility to protect doctrine, championed by the human delegates and supported by a coalition of species led by the Nyx. "Let us proceed to the next matter," Zophiel intoned. "The integration of Earth defense technologies with Council oversight protocols." On the central floor, Dr. Sanjay Patel stood beside a holographic display showing the artifact network. His team had made remarkable progress in understanding the ancient technology, working alongside Council scientists who had long been forbidden from such research. "The artifacts, or markers as you call them, were never meant to be weapons," Sanjay explained. "They're a communications network designed to share knowledge across vast distances. Their defensive capabilities were secondary features, activated only in response to threats." The Narration delegates' luminescent tendrils pulsed with concern. Yet humanity adapted them for warfare within months of discovery. "We adapted them for survival," corrected Sanjay. "There's a distinction that this council is only now beginning to recognize." Outside the chamber, throughout Celestia's vast ring structure, the impact of humanity's arrival continued to ripple outward. In medical facilities, human doctors worked alongside council geneticists, their experience with trauma care filling gaps in knowledge that millennia of peace had created. In engineering bays, human technicians introduced innovations born of desperate necessity, improvised solutions that council engineers would never have considered. The most visible symbols of change were the Earth vessels themselves. By council tradition, the ships were being restored and repaired, their systems upgraded with advanced technology. Yet at the humans' insistence, each vessel retained one unrepaired mark of battle, a scorch pattern here, a patched hull breach there, even the bloodstains on the Vengeance's bridge left intact beneath a preservation field. Admiral Jackson, now commander of the Joint Human Council Defense Fleet, had explained it simply. Those aren't flaws to be erased. They're history to be remembered. In the residential sector of Celestia, Alina entered her quarters after the council session. The space blended council architecture with familiar items from Earth, photographs of family members lost in the invasion, a small container of soil from her hometown, and a tactical display showing the reconstruction efforts on her homeworld. "Admiral, forgive me, Counselor," came a voice from the communication array. It was Dr. Rivera, speaking from the medical complex. "I thought you should know immediately. The genetic therapy was successful. The radiation damage has been reversed." Alina closed her eyes in momentary relief. "How many survivors can be treated?" "All of them," Rivera replied, her voice trembling with emotion. "The Council medical technology, combined with our adaptive approaches. We can heal everyone, Alina, even those we thought were terminal." Later that evening, Alina stood on an observation deck overlooking the docking bay where the Earth fleet remained stationed. The vessels, once desperate conversions of civilian ships, were now being studied by Council engineers with a mixture of horror and fascination. How had such primitive constructions survived combat against Krell warships? The answer wasn't in the technology, but in the humans who had operated them. Tulila joined her at the viewport, her crystalline form having healed from the journey's damage. "The Council has approved the liberation of the Nyx homeworlds," she said without preamble. "After 8 centuries of occupation, my people will be free." "The first of many reckonings," Alina replied. "Indeed." Tulila's compound eyes shifted toward a group of young Council species members who were listening to Commander Jackson describe Earth's history. "They call it the human question now, asking themselves what they would sacrifice to protect others." Alina watched as a child born on Celestia placed her small hand against the preserved bloodstain on a hull plate, her parent explaining in hushed tones what it represented. "We brought more than blood-stained ships to Celestia," Alina observed quietly. "We brought a memory this council had chosen to forget, that peace is worthless if you won't defend it, and that sometimes the most humane choice leaves blood on your hands." As the binary stars of Celestia set, casting the docking bay in crimson light, The scared vessels of humanity's desperate fleet stood as silent witnesses to a new covenant between species, not a utopia of enforced pacifism, but a community willing to bear the burden of necessary action. The day humanity arrived at the Galactic Council with blood-stained ships would be remembered not as an invasion or a violation, but as the day the galaxy rediscovered what it meant to be truly civilized. The courage to fight when necessary, the wisdom to heal when possible, and the strength to carry the weight of both.